Hi, Assalamualaikum. I am Amirul Ashraf. You can call me Amirul or Ashraf. I wish you have a good day. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Assalamualaikum and very good day to all of you. Today we will talk the last topic in our theoretical based language learning, which is meaning based perspective on second language learning. Alright, with me Amirul and continue with Lau and Tai. So firstly, I would like to give a little bit introduction about the functionalism, which is the theory that the design of an object should be determined by its function rather than by aesthetic consideration. And that anything practically designed will be inherently beautiful, and the theory that all aspects of the society serve a function and are necessary for the survival of that society. So the people that trust to the functionalism called functionalists. For example, in our topic, the famous functionalist, this is Given, Halliday, and Langacker. We begin discuss this topic by examining three small-scale functionalist case study of second language. Then we move to the last scale study, which is called ESF, European Sign Foundation Project. Okay, next. There are three famous case studies, including Dittmar 1984, which is studied Spanish to Germany, Webner 1983, Hmong to English, and the Satu 1990, Vietnam to the English. Alright, Dittmar 1983 pushed toward his study on pragmatic and synthetic mode of expression by Given. For example, this study, a cross-sectional study, learned at a very elementary level, typically express semantic concepts such as time, mood, and also speech act as the requesting, warning, and promising either lexically or through conceptual inference rather than through grammatical encoding. So, Dittmar analysis. For the example, we look Germany language. He used first language Germany people like I say in Germany. If true actually. Ich morgen Espanya why saja bedir Zuruf Espanya ni bertelah di Koknet bedir. Sorry if I wrong. So after straightforward to the Spanish, translate to the Spanish, I tomorrow to Spain and stay with you back Spain, one bottle of Koknet with you. Actually, our heart, we can know what's the meaning. So the true meaning, I am going to Spanish tomorrow and promise to bring back a bottle of Koknet with you. The only explicit reference to the future time is expressed in the lexical item, which is morgen known as meaning tomorrow. Modality and the notion of promising have to be inferred from the context. The inflected second person pronouns dir seem to be pronounced as part of unanalyzed chunk. For example, bedir or etc. Dittmar argued that the interpretation of data like this is helped by the theoretical distinction drawn by Given 1979 between pragmatic and synthetic mode of expression. So, however, Dittmar analyzed in this early study was somewhat impressionist. And the issue of how learner utterance might move from topic command structure to conventional target language sentence syntax was not addressed in detail. Altogether, while his study appealed to the theoretical framework of Given by showing that learners start the pragmatic end of the continuum and it did not yet offer any very rigorous test of it. Alright, next we move to Webner 1983, focus on form to functional analysis. Function analysis. Some other early functional study it take long listener approach. For example, Webner used the speaker named Guy learning English as a second language. So Guy as the first language Hmong. If you look at the map, Hmong language used some in China, some in Burma, Thailand, Laos, and most in Vietnam, the Hmong language. So for example, we see the example Guy. So I work every day is a water datri. They translate lah. So the true meaning is, as for the work I do every day, it involves watering the plant. So Webner studied the changing function of form is in Gi interlanguage over time. This form serves initially as general marker for topic command boundaries and developed over time into a copular verb be as in standard English. In the following example that I said earlier, the Gi sentence, which is I work every day is a water datri. So this study illustrates the need to pay attention to more than one level of language to make sense of interlanguage development in order to pinpoint the function of the form. For example, this example, the form is isa. His analysis begin at the level of discourse or pragmatic and move to an examination of syntax and morphology. An important limitation of this study, Webner study, however, lies in the fact that the language in which Guy was already fluent, are both topic prominent language. Therefore, Webner recognized it is impossible to tell whether the topic comment structure found in Guy early English interlanguage is product of the first language transfer or more universal characteristic of learner language. Other limitations have to do with the small number of subsystems actually studied, and the project focused on the single learner. So another study by Satu lah. So Satu has reanalyzed back about the redefine parathesis and syntactization. So what he defined? So the parathesis extensis relies on discourse pragmatic factor, face-to-face communication, and minimal use of the target language T. So morphosyntactic device in the expression proportion. Discourse pragmatic factor includes shared knowledge between interlocutors, collaboration between interlocutors in the expression proportion, and the distribution of the professional content over the sequence of uterine radar within a single uterine. So that is the parathesis by Satu. And then syntactization, the process through which the use of the morphosynthetic device in first language increase over time, while the reliance on the discourse pragmatic context decline by Satu on the syntactization. So what Satu found after he study on Vietnam to English, which is used, the two people is named Tan and Tai, but not Tai in our group, the Tai at the Vietnam lah. So Satu seek to clarify the given distinction between pragmatic and synthetic mode of expression. So in her work on the past time, referent and proportional encoding, she offered a clear example of function-led analysis. In contrast with, for example, Webner, who start the particle form identified in English in the language of his subject, Guy lah tadi, and try to track the changing function they express. Third, she demonstrated important interrelationship between different level of language, in particular highlight the potential importance of particularly Chang lexical item as entry point to new syntax method. And then last, she highlight the need to take account second language learner level cognitive maturity and offer reminder of the limitation of conventional interaction as a driver for synthetic development, because communication problem in this context can so routinely be solved through discourse pragmatic means. Alright, lastly, we discussed to much larger functionalist project. The project was funded by the European Science Foundation and involved research team in 5 European countries. So the aim project to describe the naturalistic interlanguage development among the adult learner. So it involved 5 European countries, 5 target language, which is see the slide: English, German, Dutch, French, and Swedish. So drawing especially by the Crane and Purdue 1992 argued that 3 developmental levels in the basic organization of learner utterance across the language group which were studied. These were, you can see that slide: nominal uterance organization (NUO), infinite uterance organization (IUO), finite uterance organization (FUO). So all these 3 type of uterine organization are distinguished as follow. In NUO, uterance are essentially simple and mainly consists of seemingly unconnected nouns, adverb, and particle. So NUO is the structuring power of verb, such as argument structure, case rule assignment, etc. And then IUO, the presence of verb, allow the learner to make use the different type of valency which come with the non-finite verb. It's allow, for example, a ranking of action of the verb along dimensions such as adjectivity and the assign of position according to the ranking. So that's all for me. Continue by my friend lah. Alright, thank you guys. Lau, continue. Thank you.
Now let's talk about time talk, where it is about developing the means to talk about pastime. So there are some very active strands of functionalist research concentrate in more details on particular area of the meaning and the ways language learners at different stages of development attempt to express them. So we have already noted the interest in the functionalist research in the mean used by the learners to talk about time or temporality. There are others also studied about the means used by the learners to talk about place and to maintain the coherent reference in discourse to express the modality. As the first example of this type of research, this will look more closely at the development of time talk as described by Badawi-Harlik in 2000. So, drawing on the ESF and the other studies, Badawi-Harlik concluded that interlanguage users of any language will pass through 3 successive stages when talking about time. So, the first stage is the pragmatic stage, where the learners have to rely on scaffolding by the interlocutors, inference from the context, contrasting events, and chronological orders in order to express time. The next stage is the lexical stage, where to express time the learners have to rely on the temporal and locative adverbals like now, then, and then they will have to rely on the cognitives, for example, and then. And then they will continue with the calendric references, for example, May, or days like Saturday, Sunday. And they will need to rely on verb lexis, for example, start and finish. So, the third stage is the morphological stage, where learners start to use verb morphologies for tense and aspects as the indicators of the temporality. So, the examples of the use of the pragmatic and the lexical means to express the temporality are plentiful in the NESF's data quoted earlier. Now, the following example is a diary entry written by Hamad, an Arabic first language learner of English as second language, where it is particularly rich in adverbials which locate the event reported in time. Like we can see here, they are at 10 a.m., 10 o'clock in the morning, and we can see there are highlighted words like after that, then, and then, like that, even though there are spelling mistakes. So learners are considered by Badawi-Harlik and others to enter a morphological stage once the example of 10-aspect morphology are noted in their interlanguage utterance. So this is called the emergence of morphology, and it does not necessarily mean that this form must be used accurately and consistently. Therefore, Badawi-Harlik listed 4 general principles which have been found in functionalist verb morphology studies. The first one is that the acquisition of morphology is slow and gradual, and it is uninflected verb form linger that in the interlanguage. So there are also irregular morphology precedes the regular morphology. For example, the irregular past form like when, came will appear ahead of the form such as jump, ended. The next principle is that form often precedes function. That is, verb inflections may appear which to begin with do not seem to contrast in the meaning or in function with other verb forms that we use at the same time. And the last principle is that learners notice and use verbal suffix to denote past meanings ahead of other mean, such as auxiliary verb. So Badawi-Harlik also claims that tense and aspect morphology emerge in the interlanguage in regular sequence, which will remain the same for particular targets in second language, regardless of the learner's first language background. Therefore, for example, the order of the emergence will look like this. It will first come in the past, and the next one is the past progressive and will be continued by present perfect and will lastly be perfect. So, this can be observed in the second language English users by Badawi Halik in the study, including the learners with Spanish, Korean, and Japanese as the first language. And finally, Badawi Halik concluded that both observational and experimental studies that shows the beneficial effects for instructions on the learning of second language tense and aspect morphology. Now, let's look at the aspect hypothesis and the acquisition of past time. So, aspects have to do with the speaker's perspective on an action or event being talked about. So, the event may be viewed as ongoing or unbound, the imperfective aspect, or as bound, the perfective aspect. While verb morphology commonly express what is called grammatical aspects, the verbs also possess what it is called the inherent lexical aspect as part of their core meaning. So, in the well-known classification, Wendler in 1967 has proposed that verbs can be grouped into 4 types according to the inherent lexical aspects. So, the first one will be the statives, where the example will be to be, to have, activities like to run, to walk, and accomplishments like to run a mile, to build a house, and achievements like to reach the summit. So these word types can also be regrouped along 3 basic semantic dimensions: the dynamicity, durativity, and the telecity, which is mentioned by Salaberry and Shirai in 2002. So dynamicity includes all verb types except the statives. Durativity includes all types except the achievements. And both achievements and accomplishments are telic, where the action referred to have an endpoint, while the statives and the activities are the atelic, which don't have an endpoint. So the aspect hypothesis also claims that the first language and second language learners will initially be influenced by the inherent semantic aspect of verbs and predicates in the acquisition of tense and aspect markers associated with or affixed to these verbs by Anderson and Shirai in 1994. Therefore, Anderson suggested in 1991 that the learners will start to use the imperfect tense with verbs from the stative group, and they will first of all use the preteric tense with the achievement verbs. So specifically, the aspect hypothesis predicts that the use of the imperfect and the preteric in the second language Spanish will spread in opposite direction across the 4 lexical aspects, which will be shown in the table here. They will start with the preteric, where the first will be the achievements, where it is telic and punctual, and it will move on to the accomplishments, activities, and statives, while the imperfect sequence of this will start with the statives, the activities, the accomplishments, and the achievements. Now, let's move on to the next presenter.
The next topic is about cognitive linguistics and thinking for speaking. So, in cognitive linguistics, we are going to touch on metaphor and English model verbs. As for thinking for speaking, we are going to discuss about satellite frame languages and verb frame languages. So, first of all, what is cognitive? When we heard of cognitive, we can relate it to our mental action or the process of acquiring information. So, in other words, once we experience new events, our mind can receive and process information immediately, right? So, therefore, from this perspective, our interaction with the world, see the earth there, our interaction with the world is mediated through informational structures in the mind. However, humans perceive the world from different perspectives, so the meaning of words and discourses could be very subjective based on different contexts. So, The cognitive approach holds that the essence of metaphor is understanding one kind of thing in terms of another. Metaphor is not just a matter of words, it's a cognitive thing. It's a way of seeing the world, of understanding complex things in terms of more simple things that we can relate to. For example, her tears were a river flowing down her cheeks. So from this metaphor, we can know that the person is crying a lot. So there are many tears that they remind the writer of a river. So this is the example of metaphor. Next, we have this English model verbs. So Tyler builds on a cognitive linguistic analysis of English modal verbs where the root meanings have to do with physical forces, barriers, and paths from the authority or doer. So the authority here means the speaker in command, and the doer is the actor or like ourselves who carried out the action. So based on this picture, the lines in the head indicates the internal force or our desire, and the double arms are extended to show strong determination. So example sentences. The doer has example sentences here is, if I let go of this apple, it will fall. So the doer has considered the cause and effect of a phenomenon and come up with a conclusion, which is the apple will fall. Next is the modal verb must. It has strong external authority with irresistible force. Now look at this picture. The person here is the authority. So the doer can't make his own choice because he's being forced by the authority. For example, sentence is, you must be home at 10. Next up is the meaning-based perspective. Another domain in meaning-based perspective is thinking for speaking. Hypothesis. So it claims that speakers of different languages think differently in the process of speaking, depending on the linguistic resources available in their specific language. For example, English L1 speakers think differently than Japanese L1 speakers. So the thinking for speaking hypothesis is concerned with the possible effects of language on the thinking processes that occur while speaking. We can identify the effects of language through the learning of verbs of motion such as path and manner. So this is the verb of motion. The verb of motion include the following elements: the path and the manner just mentioned just now. In a word phrase, we can encode the path, which is the direction of the movement or where something is going. And we can encode the manner, which is the way the movement is performed, how something is moving. And the satellite frame languages refers to encode the path in a satellite prepositional phrase and the manner in the head of the phrase. For example, she limped up the stair. So the up here encodes the path and limped encodes the manner. Another example is the verb frame languages. Verb frame languages prefer to encode the path in the head of the word phrase. For example, she ascended the stairs limping. Here, ascended encodes the path and limping encodes the manner. Let's look at some examples from different languages. Since English prefers satellite framing, so in the object floated out of the spacecraft, the verb floated encodes the manner and the satellite preposition of out of encodes the path. Another example from Spanish is, since Spanish prefer verb framing, in the Spanish translation, el objeto salió flotando de la nave espacial. Literally, the object exited floating from the spacecraft. The verb that is the head of the verb phrase, salió or exited, encodes the path. The verb flolando or floating encodes the manner. Okay, next up is the second language, pragmatics. This is a study of investigating Alto learners' ability to perform communicative functions in social contexts. How such ability develops over time and what factors affect the process of development. This is from Takuchi and Roiva, 2017. So this includes speech acts such as requesting, greetings, apologizing, and participation in conversation to achieve interactional goals. Alright, Leach and Thomas, 1983, divide pragmatics into social pragmatics and pragmalinguistics. So the first one is social pragmatics. This is the aspect of language use that relates to everyday social practices. To greet, inform people about things, request something from other people. So, on the other hand, pragmalinguistic is the pragmatic strategies and how to convey interpersonal meaning. So, in other words, how to direct or indirect you are with who you are speaking with, or how to intensify or soften what you are trying to say. But there are some issues with the research methodologies. It has to do with, initially, researchers relied on observation of learners in different social situations, but are very labor-intensive and time-consuming. So consequently, pragmatics researchers use discourse completion tasks in the study. Here, the L2 learners are given written scenario and they have to write down what they imagine they would say. However, the validity of this DCT has been criticized, and other researchers prefer to use structured speaking activities, which is role-play. This means that learners have the opportunity to manage the interaction in real-time situation. Okay. The first stages of auto-pragmatics development is pre-basic. Learners produce wordless utterances and rely on contextual information. Very short one or two words like me no blue, letter sick. Second stage is formulaic. So learners memorize routines and produce imperative forms such as let's play the game, don't look. Stage 3 would be unpacking, and indirect requests are preferred like can you pass the pencil please? And the fourth stage is pragmatic expansion. It increased the use of mitigation and be more polite. For example, could I have another chocolate because I wish to give it to my sister? Last but not least, stage 5 is the fine-tuning. It involves more refinement of requests depending on who are you talking to and the goals of the conversational context. The last topic is the evaluation and contribution of the functionalist perspective. Here is the scope and achievement. Its fundamental claim is that language development is driven by communicative need. So it is an important means of communicating with those around us. Therefore, formal resources of language are elaborated in order to express more complex patterns of meaning. Functionalist research usually involve a naturalistic case study of elder learners in the early stage of learning. This study offered us rich accounts of both rate and growth of naturalistic of L2 language learning. Functional approach to learners' interlanguage is concerned with the way in which L2 learners set about making meaning and achieving their personal communicative goals. So the interlanguage form cannot merely be interpreted through observation, but we also need to pay attention to the speech acts that learners are seeking to perform and the ways they exploit immediate discourse context to help them make meaning. Functionalism researchers have demonstrated a wide range of devices, such as the lexical and pragmatics, which language learners use in order to convey meaning. Next, we'll discuss about the functionalism perspectives on language learning development. So the functionalist researchers applied multi-level approach to the analysis of interlanguage data. For example, researchers adopt conversation analysis, which is known as CA, based on the conversation extract and coding scheme to show learners requesting behavior changes at a more strategic level. Other than that, the thinking for speaking claims that L1 thinking patterns exercise influence on L2 speech and gesture. Last but not least is the functionalism on the language learner. Adult learners acquire a socially dominant target language in a workplace. This is known as the immediate communicative need, in which people acquire a target language in order to survive in the workforce. Another factor is the desire for social interaction with the target language community to achieve communication goals. Again, it is to achieve communication goals. And classroom learners should be more successful than uninstructed learners, as they have the opportunity to attend the lessons of formal items such as learning the tenses, whereas feedback is provided to elicit modified learners' production. Okay, so this is about the evaluation part, and we have reached the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for watching.